Good evening, Tom McKay here. I'm your host with 3D Politics, the show that tackles all the exciting cultural and state policy issues here in Oklahoma. We've got several stories to get to tonight. From News 9, the Oklahoma Senate has passed a law allowing for DNA extraction during arrests. From NPR.org, we got Texas video of Sandra Bland's failure to stop. Exciting video there. We're going to talk about from constitutional grounds, video of a woman having trouble being body slammed in California. It's no laughing matter. And in Idaho, the regulatory laws have been sunset. A very exciting potential for all states looking for more freedom from regulation. From News OK, Governor Stitt, SB 361, the free speech zones at colleges have been ruled unconstitutional. A very interesting counterintuitive story there about free speech. Two more stories from News 9. Oklahoma legislature's joking about sexual misconduct at the hot mic. And from Globe News Wire, more about a cannabis bill in Switzerland. And then the Coca-Cola heir, is it Alki David?
Yes.
Switzerland? Alki David was caught with $1.3 million in pot, but that ties in to the Switzerland pot story. Is that right? It does. All right, well, let's get started now with News 9. Now, let me just say, before we get rolling, we got 7 segments. We're going to try to finish up in an hour, but don't you have some breaking news?
I do. I'd like to share that at the end.
At the end, we're going to get some breaking news that has to do with what?
It has to do with the investigation that's going on, which they're not telling us much.
Which investigation?
Into the sex scandal at the Capitol, which of course involves Chris Kennedy and Kevin McDougal.
Does it have anything to do with the legislature's joking about sexual misconduct?
Unfortunately, they did.
All
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Well, we started this program, 3D Politics, to simply have a roundtable discussion, but it looks like we're actually expanding into breaking news. But let's get started with a story from News 9. The Oklahoma Senate has passed a law allowing for DNA extraction during arrests. Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, SB 184 is on the governor's desk, and quite frankly needs calls from everybody watching. SB 184 calls for the DNA extraction of every arrestee, innocent or not. So all you're going to be is accused by police, arrested, and if you are arrested, taken to jail, they will extract DNA from you, and there's nothing you can do about it if the governor signs this.
So who is going to be affected is everybody in Oklahoma.
Every single person who could potentially end up in police custody.
Where it's going to happen is everywhere in Oklahoma.
Everywhere.
Yes.
And they're going to keep your DNA safe.
And they are going to keep your DNA on file for who knows how long and for who knows what purpose.
So if my DNA becomes damaged at some point in the future, they could look at the perfect copy and fix it.
Well, no, the Highway Patrol...
This is not so socialized medicine.
It's coming soon.
The Highway Patrol just said, look, we just want to be able to identify human remains that have yet to be identified, and that's why they need it.
Looking forward to a bright future.
Yes.
We know you're going to die on the road, so...
No. Well, they did raise the speed limit to 80. I mean, the bodies are going to pile up above the horizon
Raise it to 800, you know?
The House vote, only 13 of the 101 members voted against it. Okay, it was that heavily lopsided on the vote.
So the how then, we know the who, we know the where. The how is, how are they going to do this? Say I'm driving down the road, they pull me.
Got it.
The hairdresser asked me, how do you want me to do your hair? I says, I don't know, let me sleep on it. If I'm just pulled over, so now they set up an unconstitutional sobriety checkpoint. Safety checkpoint, whatever they call it. Are they going to collect DNA from every single person they detain at a safety checkpoint?
You got to remember, they have as much concern about the Constitution in this case and your Fourth Amendment rights as they do for your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights with a safety checkpoint.
But I'm
the
looking at the how.
Constitution is gone from this. That's the
But
point.
let's get to the how. I'm sticking with the who, what, where, when,
If
and how.
you are arrested, your DNA is collected.
Do we know if they'll collect it at the sobriety safety checkpoint?
Well, here's
that's
here's
a good
the
question. I
problem.
don't know the answer.
This came out in the House floor debate that they're already doing it. They just aren't
Standard operating
exactly.
procedure.
In fact, they were asked the sponsor in the House floor, are they doing it now? Yes, it's just not authorized yet, but they're doing it.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
so,
like Real ID. When they were specifically ordered not to do it, they did it anyway, and now we have to have it because hey, they're doing it.
Hey, we're live right now. I'm excited that anybody who's here is joining us. Broso's going to check in with the live chat. So if you have questions, comments, or otherwise, feel free to check in, and Broso will chime in on his phone to see what we got going. We got about 5 minutes left on this piece. What else do we want to know? So we need to follow up and find out, are they going to just take this arbitrarily?
Right.
When is the line? If I'm just at the mall and the cop walks by, he's not going to take my DNA.
But if you're exonerated, they're going to destroy it, right?
Well, okay.
Absolutely not. No, that's the point. It's already, the damage is done. If you're then exonerated, you've been treated as guilty already by the system.
yeah,
Just by simply taking the data.
yeah.
Yes, the data, the Fourth Amendment says that you have a right to be secure in your person. What's the word?
But,
Second
you know,
word else?
common
Your
sense
your
says
person, papers, and effects. And the thing is, you are not secure. If they can just come in and demand your DNA, your person, and take it from you.
The devil's advocate in this one would say they're not just coming in. You've been arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have not been adjudicated. You cannot lose liberty. You cannot lose the liberty that's granted to you in the Fourth Amendment, and without due process of law of the Fifth Amendment.
How is this different? How is this different than identifying anybody at any time by any other identification method?
Because a warrant must be specific. This is a general warrant. This is exactly what the Declaration, the founders wrote in the Declaration as an indictment against the king, that he issued general warrants. Now, general warrants just mean that they can go out looking for whatever, wherever, whenever.
Fishing
For whatever. And that's exactly what we've got going on here. What our founders fought and died for, we've got again.
Well, and it's more than DNA. When D'Ambroso plucked a 1-inch thing of hair off your head, he just took the entire journal of every chemical that had been entered into your body.
Hey, I'm going to need that back.
And your epigenetics, too. I know about your habits.
Why do you think Britney Spears shaved her head off several years ago?
Yes.
Because her husband was fighting over custody, and he planned to bring it into discovery what drugs she had had.
Right.
And he just said, hey, we'll get it from your hair.
Right.
So what did she do? Got it cut all off.
Right.
Okay?
Gone.
So these are the kinds of things they can do. So I hate to say that this isn't just DNA. This is everything. When they pluck a little string of hair, they get a calendar of what you've done for the last month.
For the listening audience, I think that should be explained. That's the DNA extraction is different than a fingerprint.
Yes, it is.
Because you're not simply identifying a person, you're identifying what?
Well, all sorts of things that could be there and could potentially be used later on.
Yeah.
Because of the things that potentially could be found, and given the laws for, say, drug use and things like that, they could then find crimes that they otherwise wouldn't have found.
And
I mean that's just a hypothetical.
So,
we don't know what they could find.
So it
right
sounds
now.
like if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
Well, remember, when you're, for instance, a scenario of an organ donor, they have to find somebody with a DNA match close enough that it's safe to do that. Now let's say they're investigating a rape incident and they get some DNA from the scene, and they're going to go first to the database they have. Are any of these close enough? Well, all of a sudden, if you're in that database, Now you're one of the first people they look at.
It creates a new net for them to fish in different areas.
Yes.
Yeah, convenient.
Okay, listen, we've got just about 2 or 3 more minutes. If you want to call in or chat or otherwise chat in now on this one. Let me introduce
Send me a text message and tell me when this video is playing live too.
There you go. I'm Tom McKay. I've got David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso, all 3 Davids, the Davids that matter with 3D Politics. I'm Tom McKay, your host. Don't forget to go online and chat with us. Send us your questions and let us know. We're going to talk more about this.
Tom?
Yes, sir.
We are on a new Facebook page, 3D Politics on Facebook.
3D Politics on Facebook. That's beautiful. Make sure to send all your friends there, like us, share us, etc. Before we move on, anything else on this DNA extraction?
Write the governor.
Write the governor.
Go and you can find the governor at governor.ok.gov.
Yeah.
Go there. His phone number's on there. You can write him an email. While the legislature is in session, if he lets the bill sit in his pocket, as it were, it automatically is considered a signed bill if he just lets it lapse. Okay. Now, if it was done and we were past sine die, then it would be an automatic pocket veto. But we're looking here that he actually has to physically veto this bill, or it automatically becomes law. So
we literally have to stop it, or we're headed that way.
We are. It's on the death, on his.
I think DNA is going to have to be looked at in a whole different way, including copyright and patent law. In 1786, we didn't realize that there was data storage and data constructor. That the DNA is not simply a mixture of chemicals; it's a configuration of an order. And in addition to that, the data constructors, the shape, a certain shape is patentable. The Coca-Cola bottle is patented because of its shape. Each person has a different shape. Each person has a different data storage according to their genetic copyright. So ultimately, I think DNA needs to be copyrightable and our bodies need to be patentable.
And when it is, you'll hold that claim for a shorter amount of time than someone will on a novel.
I think it should be like I think it should be like copyright.
Yeah, copyright's more durable.
For the life of the author plus 60 years.
There you go. There we go.
Well, the real thing is we don't know all the ways that they could potentially use the DNA.
Yeah.
Because they get into all of the nanny state things that they want to do to help people who've been arrested, and the things that they could then do to you later are innumerable and currently unknown. So unforeseen consequences out the ears.
They say about that road to hell, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
You're looking for asphalt. Hey, I'm Tom McKay. We're headed out of this segment and moving into the next segment from NPR.org. Here with 3D Politics, all 3 Davids that matter. David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. I'm Tom McKay with 3D Politics. All 3 Davids that matter from NPR.org in Texas. We're going to talk about a video of a gal named Sandra Bland. She failed to stop, apparently, was engaged in a traffic stop that went wild. Tell us what happened.
Well, actually, this happened 3 years ago. It was brought back into the spotlight because her cell phone video was finally released. And while her cell phone video actually isn't all that telling, there wasn't anything really new about it, I thought it was important to bring up. She died in custody, hung in her cell. Very suspicious circumstances. Don't know this. The family says absolutely not suicide. The video, if you watch the video, she doesn't seem suicidal, but she was actually stopped for failure to signal. That was it. Yeah. The officer who has, the Texas state trooper, who has since been fired, escaped prosecution, but escalated a ridiculous stop she was upset because she was being delayed, and she was upset. She thought she was going to get a ticket.
I think, didn't this officer say that he was in fear for his life? Now, he didn't kill her, obviously.
No, I don't. Well, I don't know if he said
was
anything
afraid
like
of
that.
what she was doing with her hands. And that, my understanding is that's why the video was particularly significant, because she was using at least one hand
for the
to
camera.
film him.
Well, that's good. And the other hand,
many hands does
she
she
was
have?
smoking a cigarette, so she's doing
You
this.
gotta collect her DNA to know for sure.
Oh my God.
And so what happened was
Well-
while she's filming and smoking a cigarette, he says, "Why are you so upset?" She answers his question. He takes offense at her answer.
Well, it was hostile. For her to videotape him is a hostile act, don't you?
Well, there's that
You don't
too,
believe
but-
it? Just ask any cop.
It is.
Well,
You know, don't film cops, they don't like it.
Yeah.
While they're
You like
filming
people
you.
doing stuff you don't like? Golden rule, folks.
Well, the thing is that what happened was he took offense to her answer, and then he ordered her to put out the cigarette. To which she responded that it was her right to smoke. She wasn't going to do it. He didn't have the lawful right to tell her to put out the cigarette. And he then declares that he had given her a lawful order and that she had better pull out the cigarette. And then he opens the door and orders her out of the car. Again, saying it is a lawful order, which I would beg anybody, and I have begged people, show me how it is in any way lawful.
Right.
And then
I'm
he
gonna
threatens
continue this.
to tase her if she doesn't comply.
Legal concept of precedent happens every day, therefore it's acceptable.
And then somehow in the whole thing, after this, she is arrested. I can find nowhere online what charges she was actually held for, but she is then in jail for 3 days when she is found dead.
Charge having a bad attitude, punishment, capital punishment.
Pretty much. And the question is, because so much of it got cleared up with her death, was there foul play? And that has
The only thing that I find
ruled out as
really
suicide.
particular importance to this story is that the video 100% proves that this officer had perjured himself. So he had described a fear of what she was doing with her hands,
right.
specifically both hands.
Right.
And it was impossible that she could have been doing anything with both hands other than filming him with at least
Right.
one of them.
Right.
So he lost his job, but here's the thing. I mean, either we have a set of laws for every citizen, or we have a set of laws that don't apply to anyone. Either all the laws apply or none of them apply. And this is my issue with Hillary Clinton and the Comey Justice Department and Eric Holder and all these guys, Strzok and Lisa Page. The crimes they're committing, this is one reason why Trump pardoned that sailor who had described the picture of his desk at a submarine. I said it again. He described the desk at a submarine. No technology in there other than desk technology. It was simply a desk. No computer technology, no signaling, nothing. He spent time in prison, and we have people, out here, their password is password, like John Podesta, and the Russians are getting a hold of this information, and anyone in the world that can figure out that someone's password might be password. They're getting this information, right?
I got your point.
And they're putting our secrets in the hands of everyone in the entire world.
If you've just tuned in, I'm Tom McKay with 3D Politics. We got all three Davids in Oklahoma that matter. David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. We're talking about this video of Sandra Bland, and she ends up dying in jail after a simple traffic stop.
Can I speak to the mental health aspect of law enforcement? One of my favorite cops in Oklahoma is Stephen Mills. He's actually now a city manager, but spent several years in law enforcement. He and I have a blog called Peace Officers in Liberty. He once said something I'll never forget. He said, you have to decide as an officer when you put your uniform on that morning, are you a servant or a warrior?
Yeah.
Because your attitude towards the people that you're there to protect is going to determine a lot of these things, like which kind of battles you're going to pick to fight. Because some of these things come down to nothing more than just obstinate, I'm in charge, how dare you defy me? And that's whether it comes to you have no right to videotape an officer, or you put out that cigarette because I said so.
Right.
And, so these are the kinds of things. And then the kind of mental duress that they impose, which is standard punitive things like putting somebody in isolation. Let me tell you, mental hospitals are not allowed to do that because people die from that. And now, let me say this about law enforcement. Mentally, they are some of the toughest, most strong, durable, reliable people. We need them to be that way. But they also need to understand that the rest of us aren't that way. They can push us over the edge. And I have a even if there was no foul play in this death, we have plenty of evidence that they pushed a young woman over the edge who they had no business even detaining.
They had, yeah, and it could be arguable had even no business pulling over, other than just to say, hey, you didn't signal, be more careful, and good day, ma'am. It should have been that easy, but no, it wasn't.
So
and to your point,
though. Maybe this guy was under a lot of stress.
Well, but and those kinds of things happen, and there was, I'm trying to remember the situation. Guy was under all this stress, and he ends up killing a guy because of it, and it's like, yeah, you shouldn't have been in that. You should have taken yourself out of the position. Certainly that day.
Was he afraid?
Oh yeah, because he'd been under so much stress and everything.
It's legal.
And all I'm saying to good officers, I work with officers. I train them, every month I'm down at the jail training the detention officers and the field deputies and stuff. And the difficulty that they're under. Here's the problem they have. You know that we have, right now, retired psychologists and psychiatrists volunteering to counsel them off the books because a law enforcement officer doesn't want to have to file an insurance claim for health benefits for seeing a therapist. You know why?
That's a whole,
You know why? Here, this comes back to it. Because it will affect how they look at him when it comes time for advancement.
Right.
And so they do it off the books. Here's my point, and they are under mental duress a lot. All I would say, as somebody who admires law enforcement greatly, is pick your battles. Because every hostility, every confrontation is going to have an accumulative effect on everything else you do that day.
So we got to wind this segment out. We got to wind this out. I just got to say, there's a time and a place for everything. We got to have cops, and we got to have rights, and there's a time to exercise your rights, and there's a time to litigate. If they are infringing on your rights at the traffic stop, that's not litigation time. You don't go into litigation time to argue how the cops treated you improperly.
You'll lose
during
100% of the
the
time.
traffic stop. That's right. At the same time, there's a time and a place for cops who are trained to get tough. They don't need to take a 48-year-old woman or how old she was, whatever it is, some normal driver that doesn't have training in jiu-jitsu or some other martial art like a cop, and take her to jail.
The cops don't know. She could have a tactical
newcomer. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. I'm Tom McKay with all three Davids. David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. We're coming up with more from 3D Politics.
This next story seems like the same story.
It's very exciting. Tom McKay back with more 3D Politics. All three Davids that matter here in Oklahoma. David Van, David D'Ambroso, and David Oldham. We've got another video of more normal people reacting violently and having a violent reaction from police. This poor woman is being body slammed by police in California. This is all from constitutional grounds. Tell us about it, David.
Well, this was a story that we found online, and it's a video of a 17-year-old being body slammed by a police officer who was impounding a car because of suspended registration. Now the occupants of the car claimed that they had taken care of the registration issues, and but it wasn't showing up on the police, their electronic system, and so forth. And so they were taking the car and they were putting everybody into, I don't know if they were into cuffs or what, but there was cell phone video from the back of a police car. There was cell phone video outside of the car, and then there's the girl being body slammed. I have not seen the police body cam video or dash cam video, if there is any of that.
The real question is, did the officer use regulation form when he body slammed her?
Well, he kind of grabbed her around the neck and then slammed her.
Pretty good.
Hands off the fence.
She pretty much ended up on her head before she ended up on anything else. So
Again, this
was
is
very
another
painful.
episode where
That's awful.
extreme force being used on a gal who really doesn't need extreme force.
Well, and here's the thing. Sure, it could have taken a little extra time to talk them out of the car, but the reason that it caught my attention was suspended registration. Who owns that car? Who is the rightful owner of the car and the operator of the car? At this point, it is the government saying, no, we have said you may not operate the car. The car may not be on the road.
Well, the state of California owns the car and they're leasing it to citizens.
Well, that's exactly my point.
Yeah, and here's the thing with other things. For instance, if you didn't pay your property taxes on your house last year, you have
Is that in my hair?
you have. Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Epigenetics, folks.
Have you been arrested lately?
No, you actually have due process takes place before they confiscate it.
Let's hope.
In this situation, and I have to say, it's worse in Oklahoma. Not only will they do it for registration, that means the tax you pay the state, but they now do it if their records show that you didn't pay your insurance in time. Which means you went down to your agent, wrote the check, handed it to them and everything. They didn't file it correctly. You might not get home tonight without your car being impounded. And then it's up to you to fight to get it back.
Yes.
And again, I go back to our Bill of Rights. Due process of law before any life or liberty is taken. And I would say your liberty includes the means of your own property being used to enhance your liberty.
No one needs a vehicle to get to work. That's ridiculous.
I don't care whether it's to drive to grandma's house. It's yours, you bought it, you paid plenty of taxes to buy it in the first place. Mm-hmm. But this is a problem. When we say that government never has errors in their bookkeeping, right? So it's even worse in Oklahoma because now we're relying on our insurance.
They make mistakes sometimes, David Van, and then you just go through a process and your grievances are addressed 100%. You're made whole after they make a mistake every time.
Ask Stephen Mills, who had his truck impounded.
Yeah, exactly.
What law did he break?
Asset forfeiture. Somebody with a joint drove his truck and was caught driving his truck.
That property should have been committing a crime.
As chief of police, he could not get his vehicle back from another jurisdiction, and all just because somebody else did something.
But
wrong
he was
with his truck.
recompensed with interest for the time he didn't have the vehicle. So it's
Ladies
okay.
and gentlemen, I call to the stand Alfalfa Bill Murray, who is the chairman of our Constitutional Convention.
Red River War.
Do you know that in our Constitution, under no grounds can law enforcement ever take your horse from you? Why? What does that horse represent? That is your livelihood, your means to get from place A to B, to earn a living, and that when they take your car, they're taking your horse.
Well, the entire notion of licensure, insurance requirements, and not having it voluntary but forced, and the way that we have done everything is contrary to liberty. It's all about being a subject of a sovereign government, and that's why we have these legislators who go up there and think that they have some divine right of election that gives them the right to
Isn't that
to
a political
subjugate
theory?
us.
Divine right?
Okay,
Well,
hey,
yeah.
if you're just joining us, you're joining 3D Politics on 3D Politics Facebook. And I've got David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. I'm Tom McKay, your host. This Sandra Bland story, we can talk all this heady philosophy about the way it should be, etc., etc. Sandra Bland's problem to a certain degree is trying to do the litigation and the due process during the traffic stop.
Do not argue
She
with
doesn't
cops.
have jurisdictional authority during the traffic stop, even if she's being infringed.
Well, there's two things here, and let's not meld them or conflate them together. And that is what is wise when you're confronted with a man with a gun and the proclivity to use it versus what is right, what is your right, and what is his duty before the law. Okay, those are separate. So the way that I behave myself when I'm with a police officer at a traffic stop is one thing. What I deserve and what I expect and what I can actually defend myself over is something else.
I once heard a philosopher say that if a centurion asks you to walk a mile, you should walk 2 miles.
Well, of course. And that's the point. That's the wisdom side of things. But the point is, before our law, we do have the right to defend ourselves from criminals, even when the criminal is wearing a uniform and a badge.
Okay, all right. So let's say you're standing there in front of a cop. He no longer is acting like a cop. He turns into a criminal. Okay, now he's acting like a criminal. Would Sandra Bland stand in front of the criminal and say, oh yeah, you're going to body slam me? I mean, you're going to mouth off to a criminal like you do the cop? If the cop is acting like a criminal, I wouldn't recommend to anyone mouth off to the criminal.
Right, what do they say to someone mugging you?
What I'm saying is, due process is due
Yeah.
process, and the due doesn't happen during the traffic stop.
That's a good point, Tom.
The due happens later.
Well, there's
Gotta
the
pick your
teaching
gun.
of a good dad like you and telling kids, hey, this is how you behave. And that's one thing. It's another thing for the law then to say you don't have a right to do. I'm saying you're giving good advice, but that's separate from what the government has a right
because
to declare.
this story is separate from that. Because this story is really primarily, even though it ties into the bigger heady philosophies that are incorrect and unrighteous in the way they're being misapplied. This story is about a gal who tried to do due process on the side of the road. And that was a mistake,
and
even if
realities.
the cop was wrong.
And I'm telling you, there are segments of our society that does get triggered like this, okay? And you have to really look at it. Is this a battle worth fighting to this extent on? Because there are plenty of ways to do it. There can be summonses, there can be warrants, there can be all kinds of ways to establish and maintain justice. But I'm just telling you, you have people that will get triggered. And they will go off if you press it.
And cops are people too.
Okay.
They get triggered also.
Let me tell you what the sheriff, sheriff in Waco County said to the feds. He said, you know what, anytime I needed David Koresh to come on down, I called him up and said, come on down, I got questions to answer. They got along great. Why? Because they had mutual respect. The feds did not afford him that mutual respect, and it cost 6 lives one day in a standoff.
All right, we're going to be moving on with talking about regulatory laws, free speech zones at colleges. I'm Tom McKay, your host with 3D Politics. Hang on, we're coming right back after this short break.
And we're still live.
That was pretty short, wasn't it?
And we're still live, so there you go.
All right.
3D Politics here live on Facebook. I'm Tom McKay, your host. I've got David Vann, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. All 3 Davids that matter right here in Oklahoma for all things important. We're going to talk more about regulatory laws. And holy Toledo, the laws in Idaho have been removed. Tell us about the exciting potential for sunset laws on regulations.
Boy, if only we did that here. Oh wow. Idaho has had its entire state regulatory code repealed. And it is because it was under sunset and they had a very contentious legislative session and could not come to agreement on what the regulation should be.
The benefit of gridlock.
Yes, and so what has happened is it is gone. The governor can introduce emergency procedures and so forth at the moment, but it must be approved by.
And if you get on
by
a
the
There
legislature.
are mass rapes and pillages going
Yes,
on. It is the Wild West.
Idaho has just
Sensational.
flown off the planet. Like there is no gravity in Idaho.
Did I steal your thunder, D'Ambroso?
No, I I don't know about that. I haven't heard those reports, but I know if you get on a tall enough hill here in Oklahoma, you can see the smoke pyres from here.
Yes. Yeah, it's disintegrating, You know what? When Trump was elected, he told his regulatory authorities and agencies, for every new regulation you put in, federal government, you got to get rid of 2.
That's the old Reagan theory on
And
dollars.
we know where he's at now?
Tell us.
He's at 22 for everyone.
And I got yelled at by a lot of
removed.
conservatives when
Yeah.
I was listening to Trey Gowdy speak at an event here in Oklahoma City recently, because they were big never Trumpers, anti-Trumpers, or huge critics of Trump. And I was shocked to find so many in the party today. In the argument from these fellas, their argument was that, he's just not conservative. And their whole argument was this one tiny thing over tariffs, not understanding his stated argument that he wishes to eliminate them completely in adherence to their position, but he wishes to pursue a tactic that might work as opposed to, the tactics that haven't been working for several hundred years.
Yeah, well, that's out of the box.
But I mentioned this regulatory thing, and this is what piqued my memory on it, and they're like, oh, that doesn't matter. Well, now the big tax, that doesn't matter.
Mark Wayne Mullen and I were talking one night. We were manning the Tulsa GOP booth at the state fair, and he had just gotten elected, or actually was about to. And I said, so what do you want to work on in Washington? He says, one thing, business regulations. He said, my business, I have staff of people that it's costing me, probably, he said, at least I forget the number.
A lot.
A lot. Just to comply with heating and air federal regulations. I'm telling you, you wonder why our economy is better than it's been in 50 years? I'm telling you, it's Trump getting rid of regulations.
Yes.
Because every little bit adds up.
Well, and Lori has told me that they have now, the regulators have now...
No, Lori's your mentor, right? You're
News on 6.
I think she is.
So she's in oil and gas. She works in oil and gas and dealing with their regulations that they have to deal with.
Right.
And she says that that the regulators have had their regulations stripped, and they're now trying to enforce FAQs and suggestions as though they were regulations, because these people are desperate to hold on to their little fiefdoms.
Oh, absolutely.
Regulators got to regulate.
Yes, and so we have to realize that the kinds of depravity, literally, that exists in these agencies, whether they're state or federal, is just horrible. I mean, I sat the other day next to the governor, or not the governor, the mayor of Broken Arrow, and I told him a story I had of trying to get a business license or a license to do a particular business that I had in mind. And he said, "Oh, well, that's the wrong kind of license. You shouldn't have been told to do that." And that was like, yeah, my point was that there shouldn't be any licensure in the first place. And he defended licensure, but
Imagine that.
But how can you
license to defend licensure?
I have a license to get paid.
The very point of the fact that they could then point you to the wrong license and demand it of you is
Pretty
ridiculous.
sweet if you think about it.
Tom,
I want that job.
I'll throw this in on it. Ron Durbin, who's a leading lawyer defending medical marijuana, shared a letter with me that a cannabis dispensary got because they had the term RX at the end of their name. Now, I'll tell you right now, it is state law. You cannot use the term pharmacy or apothecary,
Correct,
unless you are licensed to do such.
Unless you're a
with the state,
sorcerer.
right? But now they are saying,
the consonants R and X?
yeah.
Yes.
Now, the RX that they have is actually a Latin symbol. It means recipe, okay? It also carries the connotation of a directive, okay? But they're actually saying
with your person.
RX is, we're going to claim you can't do that
It's like
without
a copyright, trademark,
and
register
it's
mark.
the pharmacy board that was coming after this guy.
Yes.
Who it's so twisted, and it goes back to the reason that I was against 788 in the first place, because there's more and more
Do you
regulations.
want to hear anything on 2632, that law that essentially mandates that insurers conduct business with small pharmacies? I don't know if anyone had heard about that, but apparently it had gotten 100% pass rate in the House. Is that? I mean, I don't know if anyone's heard about this.
I heard there was some law they were talking about preferred pharmacies and some issues on
It's
that.
like you get in network prices even if you operate in the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
And insurers have to do it. I mean, just on its face, what does that seem like?
Right. With my Blue Cross policy, I was told that I could go to Walgreens and get it for this price, but if I go to CVS, it's 10% more because Walgreens had purchased this exclusive deal from Blue Cross.
Right, you got a better deal with the intermediary.
Yeah, and then the little guy didn't even have an opportunity to bid on those special deals.
Right. Let's tie what we're talking about that's going on in Florida about the sunset laws and tie it into
Idaho.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Florida. I was so excited about Florida.
They moved to Florida.
I don't think there's been law in Florida for a long time. I mean, when's the last time we've heard from Florida man and Florida woman? I mean, they're up to a lot of crazy
Tom,
decisions.
you're saying.
Thanks for the help, guys. In Idaho, how does this tie into Oklahoma? How can we make this happen in Oklahoma?
Well, a single potato is now $1 million because the regulations were keeping the prices low.
No, it did. We passed medical marijuana, and everybody said, oh, we're going to need a special session. Well, we didn't. And then the health department said, well, we're just going to make up a whole bunch of rules. And then the attorney general says, well, no, you can't. And so they didn't agree on what would come about in a special session. So you know what they decided? We are just going to let the industry go.
Well, so
and they declared in Oklahoma is called nationally the Wild West of medical marijuana.
Yes, it is.
Well, there's good news.
No, let me tell you right now, it is buyer beware when you go to a dispensary. Because there are no state standards, there is no mandated testing, unlike any other drug out there. You do take risks. But you know
never
what?
take a risk if it's got a state.
You take risks when you go to the farmer's market.
Hey, you are watching 3D Politics on Facebook. I'm Tom McKay, your host for 3D Politics, the exciting new show available right here in Oklahoma. I've got all three Davids that matter in Oklahoma. David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. Feel free to chat and send us your questions or comments. We'd love to fill in with you there. Let's move on now to another exciting topic.
They're so exciting.
More exciting than body slamming 17-year-olds?
We want to definitely, we haven't gotten to that one yet.
Tom McKay here with 3D Politics, all three Davids that matter. I'm sure you just now joined us, so you're just trying to figure out who are these guys. It's David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. We're moving on from news. Okay, Governor Stitt, SB number 361. Free speech zones at colleges have been ruled unconstitutional. Now, free speech usually sounds like a great thing. This is a counterintuitive decision.
Well, they weren't ruled unconstitutional. He signed the law that makes free speech zones, makes it so that there can be no free speech zones on Oklahoma universities.
I only pulled this from the literal news.
It's a
I don't just
misnomer.
make this stuff
Keep
up.
in mind, the term free speech zone.
Reading from fake news.
What I'm saying is, he said it is unconstitutional to create a free speech
that
zone.
is
let's
correct.
clarify.
That's correct.
Let's clarify that because
governor
when
knows the
a
truth.
university does that, what they are essentially saying is, you want to speak your mind, you can only do it in this little
circle,
this
or
little
square.
compound.
That's what the First Amendment says, right?
Right.
Exactly.
I don't know, I haven't read it in a while. I just work in government.
And what the bill says is, at least in the outdoors, everything is free speech on college campuses.
This is like
State
the Catholic Church takes baptism very, very seriously. If you were
In the
ever
Mormon Church.
previously baptized and you're trying to join the Catholic Church, they will make you search church records to prove you were never baptized or to prove if you have been baptized, because they don't double baptize. If you baptize again, then that's as though the first one had no efficacy. Mm-hmm. So this is a similar thing here, where they're saying you are already afforded free speech. To say, well, you can have free speech over there is to suggest you don't have free speech over here. You're already afforded free speech.
That is the correct implication.
Well, what the bill actually
Thank
is,
you, David.
the bill is a directive and a prohibition against the state universities. This won't affect Oral Roberts University, Oklahoma Wesleyan, Oklahoma Baptist, Nazarene, none of those. This is our state universities.
Is there a difference between private and public institutions?
Exactly. Private, yeah, it's their property when it's private university, but on our public taxpayer, fund run, well, they all are. But
okay, but devil's advocate here, isn't this really disrespectful to people that find your opinion extremely offensive and will develop a nasty case of PTSD from your mean words?
Yes.
Oh, they'll be triggered.
They will be triggered. And yes,
I hope, Silver.
This is what we put ourselves through in order to have a free society, because the alternative is far worse than being a snowflake.
Well, a safer society would be everyone living in a giant prison, right?
Yeah.
There's free health care.
We do not want to live in a free zone.
Well, and this is important because Oklahoma is one of the first states, if not the first state, that has actually done this. Because there are movements, student movements around the nation who are working to get their rights at their school to talk to their fellow students about their issues. The problem is that the administration of these schools approves of socialists expressing themselves, but not conservatives, not constitutionalists. In fact, there was a group, I think it was Young Republicans, wanted to hand out constitutions. Okay, and they did it in the exact same place, outside of the free speech zone, but exactly in the same place that the young Democrat socialists were at the day before.
Democrat fascists.
And the Democrat socialists were there for hours doing their thing, and in less than 5 minutes, the other guys just trying to pass out constitutions were hustled away and threatened with sanctions and so forth, which can ruin an education career.
Well, they were being offensive, right?
Well, the Constitution.
That's the way by the authorities, not by people who were offended.
It was by the university
Campus
president.
Yeah.
No, by administration. The actual
it seems like to me,
Who had been
and
by
this is kind of
before.
an amazing phenomenon that many people haven't really commented on, but the left is offended by everything. Has anyone noticed that?
Yes.
Everything,
I don't think anyone else has
everything
noticed
conservative is offensive to.
But here's the amazing thing. Okay, so it's completely your opinion. It's subjective. What you decide offends you, or what is offensive to you. It's not scientific. It's not mathematical. You decide. I can decide that shirt offends me.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that in society, for some reason, almost unlimited power and deference has been given to people that perpetually have their feelings hurt. But at the same time, right, these people that are triggered by the most minor, they even coined a term. It's called microaggression, right? You using the wrong grammar or syntax. I'm not even kidding. You not intending anything, you using normal speech is offensive to them. They can then talk about your deity, your God, Jesus Christ, in the most disgusting and depraved ways possible, and get public funding to do so.
Yeah.
Like arts of murals of Jesus Christ contained in feces. Now, if you don't think that's extremely offensive to hundreds of millions of people around the world, you're insane. These same people will seek criminal action against you and have successfully done so.
In emergency protective orders, too.
In Canada, in emergency protective orders,
Canada
for you using normal speech
Yeah.
in a way that 99.999% of the population does not find offensive. Now, for you to not realize this is an incredibly dangerous and unsustainable double standard is absurd. And I don't know why the media doesn't talk about this more. The academics don't talk about this. They want to rail on diversity. But what about diversity of thought? They have zero Republicans or conservatives in many social studies divisions on most campuses today.
You're listening to 3D Politics and watching at the same time. I'm Tom McKay, your host. I've got David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso, the three Davids that matter here in Oklahoma. We're talking about free speech zones. And let's just say that free speech has been under assault for about 40 years, and it's getting ready to swing around the other way.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, the place we call the bedrock of free speech,
Free thought, even.
yeah, free thought, is Berkeley University in Silicon Valley,
Over Berkeley.
the San Francisco Bay Area of California. which is probably in the last 2 years become the most intolerant. And that Milo Yiannopoulos, coming up just to speak to a group of young conservatives, young Republicans, brought out hundreds and hundreds of rioters, police, fires, burnings, all kinds of things going on. Ben Shapiro come back a few months later, and he has to have 600 cops to protect him. You know, this is the intolerance now. We flipped it over to where the liberals, in the best sense of the word, liberals believe that I disagree with you, but I will fight to defend your right to disagree with me. That is a true liberal.
Yeah.
Okay? What we have now in the left, and I won't call them liberals because they don't deserve it.
Progressives.
They're intolerant left. They will not. They believe in one of their foundational doctrines is it's okay to punch a Nazi. Now, when you believe it's okay to punch a Nazi, all I have to do is call him a Nazi, and I just told a bunch of people, go punch his
Well,
leg.
and it was hilarious. There's a guy with the "It's okay to punch a Nazi" moniker on his Twitter, some far leftist dude, and some Antifa at a rally, he was out and about mistook him for a Nazi.
Yeah.
And they
that's
cracked
clever.
this guy's skull open
Yeah.
with like a pipe bender.
Yeah.
You know,
I have noticed they start the conversation by saying, look, I'm going to say something, and if you disagree with me, I'm going to get violent. And when you disagree with them, they say, you're inciting violence.
Yeah.
It's like, I love that.
Brian Hall just won the internet. His comment was berserkly.
Berserkly.
Good one, Brian.
So anyway, to
Go ahead.
sum up the free speech.
Yeah.
Well done, legislature and Governor Stitt.
Yes.
Well done.
And I have to say, I'm disappointed in you, Representative Stan May of Broken Arrow. You sided with the Republicans in the House, the Democrats in the House, and voted against it. He's one of 2 Republicans that voted against it.
You might be an R.
And I'm even more disappointed with you, Emily Virgin, and all of the Democrats who voted against
I can't
it.
believe he turned it into this.
I have to. They voted against it. It has nothing to do with the R and the D.
Gosh, you
It
can
has
tell.
to do with their sense of liberty, because I'm sorry, my friends in the left have forgotten their way.
Because most
They-
liberals are not liberal, right? That's the
They're
problem.
progressives. They're progressives.
They're
A
socialist
progressive by
progressives.
definition is a liar.
Yeah.
Whatever agreement you make with a progressive today is never
Fair
the
and balanced
ending.
coverage,
It's
yeah.
always the next step for them.
Yeah.
You can never have an ending agreement with progressive. It's always their first step.
Right.
You say, okay, we're done and square, and they say, no, this is just the first step.
Yeah.
So, listen, we're going to finish this segment up about three. We got about 3 segments to go. Please stay tuned with 3D Politics. We're going to come back with a blockbuster information about the sexual misconduct. But before we do that, we're going to do 2 stories on cannabis. Stay tuned with 3D Politics.
And still alive.
Seems like we never go away, just like being married.
I'll read this comment here in the interlude.
Oh, please do.
Blake Barber, do you think that any colleges would be open to holding debates/discussions as media events? It seems that local TV, YouTube channels, Facebook could advertise to force the conversations on people. Yeah, they could, but I want you to notice something really interesting, Blake. So we are winning the war of ideals, and that's why commentary has been shut down. If you notice, they fully closed the free speech.
Yep.
What happens when you're overran in a position, right, militarily? You call in,
Nuclear strike.
Mr. Ollie North or whatever, in his movies that he's directing. He says, airstrike in my position because you're overran. You've totally lost
That's
it.
Oliver Stone. Ollie North was a
Oh,
colonel.
boy.
Ollie North.
Close enough.
It's a military thing. He did it in Iran. I think he sold them some cheap napalm or something. I don't
I'm
remember.
really disappointed with you, Oliver Stone.
Anyway, the point doesn't matter. The point doesn't matter. The specific doesn't matter. The point, rather.
There we
The
go.
point is this: they're losing the conversational battle.
Yes.
So they're destroying conversations. Period.
Correct. If
The
I can't
comment
have it,
section.
nobody will.
Right, so they've totally lost that domain because they can't have a rational argument.
Right.
There's no real leftist talk radio. Doesn't
Yeah.
exist because they can't have a conversation. Cletus from, the Appalachia can call in and absolutely wreck any liberal commentator.
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Just by asking questions.
Just by asking questions, and he's like, man, I don't know much about politics, but it seems like, and he's right. Can't do that to him.
I'll agree with AOC here. You may not have been intellectually correct, but you're morally correct.
And they have statements like this. And what is their morality? Right? They've created a world they believe morality is completely subjective. Now,
I just set him off on another rant.
Well, it's going to tie in. So this is rant time, guys.
Yeah.
I had 14 ounces of espresso and you're going to get it burned off in this segment. So the point is that CNN has disabled their comment section, right?
Yep.
Facebook essentially has made commentary a bannable offense.
And they Alyssa Milano won't even have sex with me anymore.
And they'll throw in 5% leftists to say, look, we're doing it to everyone. Just like the IRS throws in 2% leftists in their essentially illegal audits on conservatives. And they'll say, well, listen, there were 2 leftists out of 2,000 conservatives, so that means we were targeting both sides. And what they'll fail to mention is, well, they're disproportionately targeted toward conservatives. The point is, yes, universities skew left hard. The media skews left hard. This is by self-identification. These people are saying this. The people in the media and the people on campuses are saying this. So the thing is, no, they don't like to have conversation. It goes all the way back, tying into this free speech story.
Well,
because why do they want these zones? They'll shut it down.
The sad thing is, they are teaching intellectual laziness. And why do you go to university? Because it's supposed to challenge your thought. As the scripture says, iron sharpens iron. That's how man's supposed to sharpen man. But what we're not doing is actually pushing each other, challenging each other. No, we're threatening and shutting people down who in any way make me feel uncomfortable.
And we're going to use the force of government to do it because we're going to be triggered by it. We're seeing it with vaccines. We're seeing it with conservative commentary. We're seeing it with constitutional commentary, things like that. All because we are actually winning the argument. Sure. They won't show up to debates.
You can afford to be lazy when you're fat, right? And they've won so many battles, they're fat on victory. They're living high off the land, the left. They've won every social battle for the last 115 years.
Culturally, that's true.
Cultural battles.
This is exciting, guys. Finish this up because we're running out of time.
So the thing on this is that they've won these battles, and we've got to understand, because we do have more empathy as conservatives. Scientifically, Jonathan Haidt, Righteous Mind, read it. On average, he's a liberal, and he discovered through research that conservatives on average have more empathy than leftists do. If you could, in a sense, simply declare your view as correct and get your way, wouldn't you rather do that than argue with someone? If you're a cop and you pull someone over and you're saying, listen, I've got the authority of law and I've got a gun. I might be wrong, but you're going to have to pursue it in a due process position, but you can't pursue it here because in this situation I have the power. They have this societally. The left has an authoritarian stranglehold on society where they do not have to debate us. It's sort of an illusion. We want to talk about ideals. They have the force. They are the CEOs of these big companies, of Apple, of Microsoft, of Google. They are the provosts. They are the deans of these universities. They are the bureaucrats, and they are the people in the media. They're the ones that can just tell you to get bent. They don't have to debate you. They don't have to listen to your calls through process. So we're really on the back heel, and we're approaching them as if all of our rights are intact. But I think there's a new day dawning, so I think that's exciting, and we're going to win some battles here.
Russell, I appreciate you taking up the chat line there for us. No, I do. I really do. Because we do want to interact with you, the listener out there, more and more often. We need to breeze very quickly through 2 cannabis stories. Globe News Wire about a cannabis bill in Switzerland, and the National Herald story about Coca-Cola Air Alki David. He got caught with $1.3 million in pot, but it was for a business reason.
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's a lot to this. What happened in the Caribbean Isle of St. Kitts and Nevis? Biggest island's maybe 15 miles long. Okay, so we're talking about small. But the Supreme Court in that jurisdiction, that domain, declared that the cannabis laws were an unconstitutional infringement upon the Rastafarian faith.
Which is it's literally it is. It's a religion.
Yeah. And so struck down all the marijuana laws, and then ordered the government. Let's see, you got 90 days to restructure this in a way that's not unconstitutional. That happened on the 13th of May, just 2 days ago. The same day, the heir of Coca-Cola Europe, he's Alki David from Greece, he decides that he's going to move in now. He loads up a private jet with over $1 million worth of plants, clones, and seeds. And he's all set to, for this new legalization.
To head into the Caribbean.
Yeah. What this became was a test of wills, and the government said, oh, no, you don't. And they impounded his plane at the airport and took everything. And so what you've got is the Supreme Court saying, we've struck down all those laws you're using, and the government's saying, but we're still the government and we're going to say. So now we're at an impasse here, and I don't know how it's going to turn out.
But doesn't Alki have more money than that government? I mean,
Yes. Coca-Cola, that bottling distribution company is the largest beverage distribution company in all of the European Union.
And I heard that the King of England was with him too. I think it's Jonathan Myers-Rees or something. He played like Henry VIII or something. Yeah. For some reason, he was on this trip with him. Maybe they're pals.
And so this is a battle, a test of wills going on.
What is the constitution, or is it you suggest it's a constitutional government? What style of government is it? Is it
I tried to find out more about that.
Government.
It is a Western style government. Okay. There's no doubt about it.
It's probably more British than American.
Yeah, and now this is an island just maybe 150, 200 miles east of U.S. Virgin Islands.
Okay.
In there. But anyway, so you've got a situation where it's a very Western cultural democracy, if you will, but we've got a problem here.
So this is pressure coming from the capitalist world moving into an area that they can see is getting ready to be commercialized and open. So did he get there too soon? Or is it just the acting officials are acting behind the times of their Supreme Court?
I think his plane registration was suspended.
It's
full circle here.
But keep in mind, you've got a government that just got knocked in the rear end by their own Supreme Court. Right. And then this guy comes in, and somebody tipped off somebody here.
Well, and if they can pound that stuff, that's going to benefit.
Well, they will have found it. It doesn't need a tip off. They will have found it because he's flying it internationally, and they have
they'll walk on and say, "Look, there she is."
You can smell that plane for hundreds of miles.
We got I'm Tom McKay with 3D Politics. All three Davids that matter. We got about 1 minute to work in. What is this thing in Switzerland, and how does that tie into the other?
And what state is Switzerland in?
I think somebody else had grabbed that one.
Who knows what the cannabis bill in Switzerland? Apparently, they have passed a bill in Switzerland that makes cannabis
neutral.
Legal.
Oh, yeah.
and it's getting.
I didn't feel a thing.
Greece is getting ready to do it. This is the kind of thing that's moving across the European
Union. The whole globe is seeing the financial potential.
Good to see Europe finally catching up with Oklahoma.
I'm ecstatic to actually see this and see it going socially across the world, because what it's going to do is it's going to change our foreign policy with our neighbors just to the south of us. Because we have so much done over drug importations and so forth, and with the social change and it being so widespread, it's going to mean that we're going to be able to re-examine our dealings with our neighbors. And I think it can only be healthy for us.
It does threaten the Mexican narco state.
Absolutely, which is fabulous.
Switzerland is a global leader in pharmaceuticals, both research and manufacturing.
That was part of the story. It was a medical push. It was all about medical and etc.
And chocolate as well.
Chocolate and heavy water. So we got one more segment.
That was Sweden, actually. With the heavy water.
Or Norway. Who knows?
Oh, that's right.
They're all not in Oklahoma.
Sometimes I just say apparently, now this is going to lead us into our final story of the night. The breaking news Anytime you can have breaking news on a sexual misconduct story, you know how exciting that is.
We held you here for this long. I almost forgot. This is like the most exciting and relevant story.
Hold me. From News 9, though, to close us out this evening, once again, you've been watching, I hope, all hour long, 3D Politics.
Definitely.
I'm Tom McKay, your great host. We've got all three Davids that matter in Oklahoma. David Vann, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. Make sure to tune in again next week, and be sure and like the page and comment and ask questions.
Please like and subscribe. It
And
helps
check
us
us
out a
out
lot.
on our individual pages. Sooner Politics.
Thank you.
Constitutional Grounds.
And David D'Ambroso.
Right.
I have zero ego.
I think you're on the inside of a chocolate bar packaging page.
And what about the obnoxious party guests?
I think that was like 35 years ago is what happened.
Wasn't born then.
Can we be your new posse here for the...
I think you just did. Okay, so to close us out, from News 9, Oklahoma legislatures were joking about sexual misconduct. When I heard the audio, it did not sound like anything as a professional comedian I've ever heard as joking.
No. And I have to tell you, I got a call.
Tell us what happened first. Who and what happened?
Okay, so the governor decided to do a press conference with the House Republican caucus, not the Senate. They were basically doing a showdown with the Senate because the governor and the Senate leadership had kind of reached an impasse, and they were doing kind of a test of wills. So the governor says, okay, I'll get with Charles McCall and his leadership in the Republican caucus, and we're going to say that we agree. And so they had these dueling press conferences going on at the same time up in the press room conference up there, the Senate's meeting there. So the governor says, come down to the blue room. It's a fancier room. It's bigger. It's nice and everything. So all the Republican caucus leaders were all hanging around waiting for the governor and the speaker to show up, and they're standing around. And of course, all the media's setting up. Channel 9, Aaron Brillbeck is there. They set up on their Facebook page a live feed and just let it go. Well, whenever you got one of these and you want to be seen with the top dogs, you kind of position yourself pretty close to the podium there, right in the middle. And of course, that was some real estate that one of the guys in leadership, Mark McBride, Mark's a good friend, I know Mark, and so he's standing there, and J.D. Nolan from Sand Springs was kind of close by there, and Scott Fetgatter comes in. One of the things first, J.D., sees Fetgatter, says, is Al Gerhardt here? And Scott says, I don't know.
Get old Al.
And that all of a sudden triggers a thought with Mark McBride, who's just a good old... Mark's a roofer by trade. He's a construction guy.
Godspeed.
He's just plain spoken, and believe me, he speaks his mind. So he comes up to Fetgatter and says, with the mic on the podium, they're live.
Nobody knows it's on.
Yeah, and nobody knows. And so he says, I hear you molested that girl after Kennedy did. Well, let me tell you, I talked to Scott last Friday, and he was already frustrated that his name was brought up in it. And to be fair to Scott, when the victim number one, remember we talked about this former lawmaker, was setting the scene, describing to Al Gerhardt with Sooner Tea Party, where this happened, she named specific things that could be proven either true or false, and including mentioning the people at the table. And she did mention Scott Fetgatter was there. So
this being corroborated, I guess.
Right. So because now Fetgatter's name's out there, Mark McBride said, hey, so...
Marky Mark.
Yeah, is it true you had sex with the girl, or molested the girl, I think was the term, after Chris Kennedy did? Because Kennedy's alleged to have improperly touched, as we talked about last week. So Fetgatter's had enough of this. And that was a loaded question. And Scott, rather than blowing up, he decides to get sarcastic. He says, no, but I was there and I allowed it.
And he
Well,
was,
how's that
in
sarcastic?
his mind, he thought that was
And
sarcasm. Is that what you're saying?
because
But allegedly, that's what literally happened, though.
Al
Allegedly.
Gerhardt, if you read his original article, he's not a fan of Scott Thuggery, and so he's kind of digging in on him and Kevin Wallace saying they were there, so they allowed it, so, and that bothered Thuggery. He told me last Friday that. So he says that. Well, Mark McBride can pick up on sarcasm pretty good, and so he decides to out sarcasm his sarcasm. He said, "Well, you sure it wasn't actually a donkey or a goat?" So now we're getting into crude bestiality.
See, when I heard that, I didn't even follow. I didn't even. That was so a non sequitur. It was a goat. It what?
Yeah.
The molestation.
The video.
Wasn't even a proper
Very
joke.
progressive.
I think it was the subject of the video.
It was crude, and so evidently, and I get a call from Al Gerhardt, Dave, you got to see what's going on, and he was tipped off by some people in the Democrat caucus.
And wasn't this filmed on like a local news channel? Like the whole thing's there. You can watch the whole video.
It's on the Griffin Communications, a sister station to KOTV here in Tulsa. It's Channel 9, News 9.
It's there. You can watch it.
It's still there.
They stepped in the studio.
And now, so yesterday Scott Thuggery calls me and he tells me, he says, Aaron Drillbeck, who's the the head guy for Channel 9, he said, look, I don't really want to run this, but my editor said, my God, we're running with this.
Right.
And so they pick it up, I think Channel 5, KOCO, the NBC affiliate.
The Oklahoma Drudge
they
Report.
picked up. So, and then they, of course, so Jane Randall's been following this whole thing. She's told me, she says, keep me up to date, And then, last night, the DC press, the Hill media news site, decides to pick it up. So now they're reading about it in DC. But, Scott called me yesterday, and, Scott, I'll give it to him. He's a pretty upstanding guy. He right away issued an apology. He said, the first thing I did, he said, was I called my wife, and he said, honey, you have to know something's going to come out, and I want to tell you first before you see it in the press, because it's seen as demeaning against violence against women. Okay, that's the narrative. And, I told Scott, I don't think it was your best press statement, because you never, I told him, I said, you don't start a genuine apology with, if I offended anybody, that just doesn't, try saying that to your wife.
I just think that this is just a huge reflection on the fact that we allow these people to plan our economies.
Yeah,
when they can't plan being picked up by a microphone.
Let's wrap it up.
And I told Scott, I said, look, you were sick of this. I knew you were. You told me you were sick of it last Friday. So, you kind of threw a sarcastic remark, and then that just upped it because Mark decided to go into bestiality comments. Now, Mark did not issue any retraction or apology, Mark McBride. And that's disappointing because in the past, Mark has gotten his mouth has gotten him in trouble, and he usually owns it. So I was surprised he didn't. But then, the other breaking news I want to say on this is the investigation is proceeding. Several people have been interviewed. I'm not going to say who has, but a number of lawmakers are interviewed. Even so much as they've even recovered the porno video.
So the investigation is moving forward.
And yes, so there's a number of things going on, and including a possible criminal referral.
So when he said goat, did he mean greatest of all time? Hey, I'm Tom McKay. I'm your great host here at 3D Politics. We're going to wrap it up this week. Don't forget to check back with us again next week. Chime in, like us, and comment or question. David Vann with Sooner Politics. David D'Ambroso with Constitutional Grounds.
That's Oldham.
Oh, Oldham, Constitutional Grounds. Broso, you can catch him on Facebook.
I was complimented.
I'm Tom McKay. You can find me at Tom E. McKay at Twitter. Find that for the fun of it. 3D Politics. We'll see you next week, kids.
Sure
Thanks
do
for joining
before
us.
Kennedy and McDougal are in prison.
All right.